Russian troops leave the city in the face of Ukrainian attacks, leaving behind dead soldiers. In the south of Ukraine, one after another, such as villages, towns are being completely liberated from the hands of the Russian army by the Ukraine army. The military progress of the country's troop is now visible in the east. All in all, especially in the south, the Russian troops are in a very bad situation. So is Russia is going to use a nuclear bomb? That's why we have today's video. Western countries have always followed a red line in Russian war with Ukraine. That is, Ukraine should not attack Russian territory. After declaring 4 regions of Ukraine as a part of Russia, Moscow warned that an attack on those regions would be considered an attack on Russian territory. But it appears that Western countries are not thinking about Ukraine. They are not only denying this inclusion but also attacking these areas and reclaiming these lands. In such a situation, what options are open to Putin now? Will they withdraw from the occupation or continue the war? It is not possible for Russia to leave these areas at this time. So what can they do for those holding these areas? One thing is clear in the last 7 months of war that the Russian army has suffered heavy losses. They have a problem getting the kind of manpower or manpower needed to fill their numbers. Now don't use the air force, the navy, the missile fleet to solve this problem or send Russian citizens to war. They have this option. As Russia retreats in the face of defeat in southern Ukraine, there is little sign of counteroffensive. Although the country announced last month that it would have 300,000 troops in reserve to cover its troop defeat. But the question is how much Russia will be able to turn the situation of the war by bringing these reserve soldiers. Mark F. Kennicon, a senior advisor to the United States, said Russia now needs to increase the battlefield capabilities. No doubt that can be done with reserve troops, but the complex process of recruiting, training, and sending people to war is causing chaos. In some places, it is not able in sufficient numbers and there is widespread protest. To change the war situation, they have to continue to collect these troops. Russia has another path ahead, that is to turn the tide of the war using the country's advanced air and naval power. But since the beginning of the war, Russia has not been using their advanced weapons. Will Russia do that now? In this, Mark F. Kennicon said, the vast majority of the three forces, the Navy, the Air Force, and the missile fleet, were not used. But if Russia sees that the Ukrainian forces are losing the Russian forces with the help of NATO, then maybe the Russian authorities can use those three forces anew. The Ukraine war has seen some of Putin's tactics. The first is to capture the capital in Ukraine. Putin could not do that. His second strategy was annex 4 territories from north to south and annex them to Russia. Putin did that. A third tactic is to intimidate Western countries into cutting arms supplies to Ukraine and contributing to an end to the war. He wanted to do this in 2 ways: by creating a gas crisis and driving a wedge between European countries and threatening nuclear attacks. But here too Putin has failed. So, will Russia really use nuclear weapons in Ukraine? In this, Mark F. Kennicon said, the war in Ukraine is taking place over a wide area. The soldiers are scattered, so to get result using it, many bombs have to be used. If that happens, the Russian army will be isolated among themselves due to its radioactivity. Moreover, the use of this weapon by the Western in response to the war may take a large scale. So Russia seems unlikely to use nuclear weapons. while the situation in the Ukraine war is in Russia's favor. It is understood that Putin is preparing for a long-term war. Apart from nuclear weapons, there are other options such as using weapons of mass destruction or increasing the number of troops. On the other hand, Ukraine is receiving new shipments of weapons. It is clear that the war in Ukraine is going to escalate.